Want to welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I'm Pat DeLuca. Most of you know that, but and I'm going to be talking this afternoon about is there a shortcut for that and shortcuts. I'm doing a couple of things a little differently than I've done before, so hopefully they'll all go well. In your control panel, you should see a entry that says handouts. And if you do, actually, if you guys don't mind, just kind of somebody raise their hand and let me know you see it. The presentation that I'm working with today I've also added as a handout. So if one or more of you or all of you want to try grabbing that handout and downloading, and just raise your hand and let me know that you were able to do it. Oh, excellent. So the presentation today is a little bit different. I'm not going to kind of go through the presentation. I'm using it more as my cheat sheet. And I want to share with you that I have been talking about doing this for a while, right? Going through and hitting all the buttons and trying to find and make a list of all the shortcuts and where they are and kind of how they work. This is a work in progress, right? This is like 99% accurate. I'm still learning and digging around to see what's where, and kind of trying to figure out if there were kind of some high-level things about shortcuts and how they work so that I could share it with you. So the other thing, I should mention, of course, that I'm recording it, and it'll be available on our YouTube channel and on Service Desk. And I've got a couple of polls at the end, because another thing that I'm doing today is we're trying to gather a little kind of insight into what you think about some of the things that we might want to change, kind of new features when it comes to shortcuts, because it's on our list of potentially something to address as we move into the next version of dp2 or our work as we get started in the fall. So toward the end, I'll be doing some polls and, opening it up. I can just open it up for questions and other things. So with that said, I'm just going to move through a couple of these. So I'm calling these not so custom or not so new shortcuts. Some of these things are things that it's kind of always been this way, or we've added things or modified things, or Windows has changed things. And if you go through that, I'm going to kind of just thumb through this document so that you can see it and get a sense, because I'm going to walk through some of these things. As an example, we've always said, right, the Alt key will bring up those underlines. But in Windows 7 and Windows 10, in the ease of access for keyboards, you can enable those shortcut outlines so you can always see them, which is how I'm going to be set up. So I'll be kind of going through some of these things, and I've tried to organize them by the general categories of, order data and select order. I've got the order image or the adjust images one here, just so that we kind of begun a list. I don't know if you guys have done this. I know a couple of labs have kind of gone through this same process, but I thought I would share what we were learning. So with that, and I'll come back to that custom shortcuts piece in the end. So with that, I'm going to just switch over to dp2 and sort of walk through some of these things. And I will try to pay attention to the panel in terms of, questions and other things. If I don't see your questions, as we kind of go through the process, I will certainly take a look as we, toward the end and when I'm running the polls and things like that. So as I said earlier, one of the first places or things that I wanted to highlight is, we used to do, say, Alt key, but with Windows 7 and Windows 10, I don't really remember before that, but I have set it up in Windows so that when I go to, and I'm just going to show you this real quickly. I think you're seeing this actually. Wait a minute, I'm going to pull this up so I can just check my audience view here. Yep. So when I go into settings, oops, it's on my other monitor. Bring it over here. Let's go to ease of access, just like I said you would. And I go to keyboard. Yours may look slightly different than this, but I have enabled shortcut underlines turned on so that way they're always on. And that way I can always see them. And as I go through some of these things, just kind of as a high level thought, the keyboard shortcuts that we have in dp2 are kind of organized by the window that you're in, right? So if I'm using keyboard shortcuts and I'm here in the main screen, right, and I hit my alt key, and again, I'm going to you're just going to have to kind of, I wanted to trying to figure out, I almost never use shortcut keys when I'm training because I want you to see what window I'm going to and what I'm going to be doing. So I'm just going to say I'm in the menu items and I hit my alt key, which got me to the menu item. If I hit the W key on window, right, or the H key on help, it's going to take me, it's going to take me to where I want to go. So rather than just enabling the underlines, it's going to kind of help me get where I'm going. And in this case, right, if I hit enter, of course, I get to the table of contents for dp2. And I did want to mention, this is version 22. We did do a release this morning for 22.0.32, which we recommend that you install even if you just upgraded to 28 because we found a couple of bugs. So we want everybody to be aware that we didn't send that out frivolously right after we did the other one. We really do want you to upgrade. And we know that can be painful for some of your labs. So our apologies, but please do it anyway. Thanks. I'm going to go through select order first because that's kind of where I start my workflow, but I will open up the tables and there's a couple of other things I'm going to mention along the way that are relevant to kind of the overall idea of how do I become more efficient, how do I use shortcuts to do that. So I'm going to use the sample order. I'm going to hit my enter key, and in my version of dp2, this is again, it's just kind of another thought about customizing how dp2 works. I have a script override that opens up my order data table at the same time as it opens up my order items and my order images. And I'm going to talk a little bit about select order because select order is one of those places when I'm opening windows, I actually would leave select order closed. There's a lot of shortcut keys for select order so that you don't have to hit the 2 drop down. So as an example, I can open up, and I'm using my Alt key for the most part. There's a couple of variations of this, but if I open up, Alt C is going to open up the customer data table. I would have been able to, use Alt O to open up the order data. I can use Alt X to, whoops, that's what I get for moving away from the wrong window. And that is actually make my own point, right? It's important to know where you're at because dp2 is going to respond based on what's the active window. So I need my select order window to be active, but Alt X will open up my export images window. Alt Q will open up the job queue if I need it. Alt R will, it would have opened up my order items window and opened up my run dialog, but in this case my order items was open, so it just opened up my run dialog. So there's a number of different ways that you can use select order with shortcut keys so that once you have the order open, you have a lot of capability there that doesn't require you to really open up any other window than the window that you actually want. So I'm going to talk a little bit now. I'm just going to kind of move through some of the things that I have here. The order data is another one. I mean, some of these are universal, right? So with that order selected, I'm going to go ahead and use the F4 key to open up the actions right-click menu. And I'm going to move through. You can see that with that opened, I've got a couple of kind of opportunities here. So I have my underlined items in the right-click menu, but I also have some added capability in the right-click menu. So as an example, if I select E for export, it's going to go ahead and kind of find that E in that right-click menu, and it's going to open up that secondary window. And if I hit E again, it's going to go ahead and, in this example, export data. So, and this is true for, depending again on which window, it's true for the grid view windows. So this is, and I'm just kind of using that as an example as I go through that. So, so the next one I'm going to talk about is order images, and order images is one of those places where we have so many different right-click and kind of secondary right-click menus that there are some shortcuts that are hard-coded into or written into the program, right? They're part of the engine. And as an example of one of those is the ability to use that M key. So what the M key is going to do is the M key is going to enable the crop tool, and in this case, something else you can kind of move it around within the crop. You can also use the mouse to scroll in and out of the crop, and that can be really handy for labs that are using, that use the order images window to do a lot of their work. And there's a number of different pieces to different steps that can be taken, and of course they're in the handout. But as an example, and I want to point this out because this is another one, and I'm going to just hit the M to disable that. If I use Control F in the images window, then it's going to bring up that import images window. So for those of us who are constantly doing find images to import, it'll bring that import images window right up. Another couple of shortcuts that were done specific to a type of workflow in the order images are using the F keys. So as an example, if I'm in this window and I hit F4, that's going to give me that right-click menu. If I'm in this window and I use F8, and I'm going to have to, right, so this is one where it's going to want to use the balance from this image. And then F8 will copy that balance, and then F9, of course, would paste that balance to any other images. The same thing is true with a crop. If I have a crop here and I go to F10, it's going to copy the crop, and then I can apply that crop by using F11 to any other image. So those are some of the things that we've actually put into the program so that any lab can use it, and they're relatively easy. They're pretty straightforward. Is in the Adjust Images window. We've got Adjust Images. If you select keys, that's of course going to give you all of the shortcut keys for cropping and color correcting and rotation and all of those other things. So this is very handy, and this would probably not be used by a lab that's using a wheelman, but these have been in here for a very long time, so that labs have them to be able to use them. So the last one that I'm going to actually kind of directly cover is the order items window. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the order items window, of course, is because we have the ability here to, with the W key, bring up the different workflows and be able to see those different workflows, and or kind of look at the different workflows in the order. And that's another one that was added because folks really wanted to be able to get to those workflows quickly. And there's a couple of others that you're going to see that are a little bit of control, like Q. Right? Q's been around for a long time. Is quantity. Oops. I guess I should select it, right? Is the ability to change the quantity or to, increase the quantity. And some of those, they'll also, I've seen labs use them both as Q and as Control Q. They work either way. So that if you're using Control Q, you can just use the Q. And I looked at it before. In this case, with the R, is to run the same letter works here as it did in Select Order. And there's a lot of that. There's okay, what letter did we use here? As opposed to what letter did we use somewhere else. So that's really kind of the heart of just going through, providing you guys with some reference material you might not have had before. So a couple of thoughts about custom shortcuts. And I debated about kind of how to do this, but because I want to acknowledge that many of you have some awesome skills. And but I did want to put a couple of caveats around them. And one is you may have done your own programming and you've got your different things in your UI and different combinations. But just to kind of a food for thought is that if you're using keys that we may already be using and you've overwritten them when you upgrade, you could overwrite one of ours, we could overwrite one of yours. So something to think about. As I mentioned earlier, right, some of the shortcuts are written into the engine itself. Another thought is script overrides, right? You can add your own buttons if you need that kind of level of efficiency, or as I did, I just added a script override so that when I hit the enter key on select order, it opened up my order data table at the same time. And of course, there are those of you that are acknowledging that those of you that you're using the program as assistant to create custom UIs to make some workflows more efficient. So, if you're doing those things, those are another way to kind of approach this. And I'll thank you all for taking the time to spend with me this afternoon, and wish you a very nice Friday and a good weekend.